say that you don't have memory issues when you can't remember how you stabbed him so many times and slashed his throat?
Well, I think that I have a good memory, and June 4th is an anomaly for me. It's like I said yesterday, it's in a class of its own, and I can't explain what kind of state of mind I was in. It was, the most of the day was an entire blank, and little pieces have come back, but not very many. So I can't explain that day alone, but if you were to put that day over here, all the other days of my life, I don't think I have memory issues that are any different from another average person.
Even though the prosecution does not have a chance to do a recross examination, which I was very distraught about because of all the wacky things they were bringing up on redirect, I thought the state never got a chance to question on those things. Who needs it? Because the jury in this jurisdiction gets to ask questions themselves, and their questions are really better than any of the questions that the lawyers would ask.
Why did you put the camera in the washer?
I don't have memory of that. I don't know why I would do that.
They have over 100 questions for Jodi Arias. Good questions too, like, if you caught him masturbating to photos of little boys, why would you keep sleeping with him?
That was not a side of Travis that he wanted to even exist, and of course I didn't want it to exist. I was under the impression that when he was able to sleep with a woman as opposed to fantasizing about a child, he felt like more normal as a man. So also, I had seen prior to this incident many beautiful qualities about him and good qualities about him and things that were attractive about him. And I believed that this incident was a negative part of himself that he didn't want to foster, or that he was fighting or struggling against, and that he ultimately wanted to eradicate.
If you thought he was trying to kill you, why didn't you run out the door?
Why didn't you just run out of the house instead of grabbing the gun from the closet?
Well, again, I can't. It happened so fast. I did initially think run, so that's why I went down the hallway. And then right as I got to the hallway with the doors being shut, it just seemed like more of an obstacle. It would give him more time to catch up, to open the door this way and run around it and out when this door was an equal distance and open, and I could just run that way and into it. So my thought maybe initially was to run out the other door and then around and out, but just something to create more distance, because last time I'd run that same route, I was not successful in running out of the room.
If you killed him in self-defense, why didn't you dial 911?
When I sort of came out of the fog, I realized, oh crap, something bad had happened, and I was scared to call any authority at that point.
Questions like that, questions I would like to ask Jodi Arias. I love it. As a trial lawyer, both sides have got to be quaking in their boots because they don't know exactly where this is going to go. As a matter of trial practice, you never ask the question you don't know the answer to. The very few times I've done it in court, about 80% of the time it backfired. That'll teach you a lesson. These questions are not orchestrated by either camp, defense or prosecution. They have no control over these questions. They don't necessarily know the answer to these questions. And that is why I'm sure neither side is crazy about this whole procedure. But this is the law in Arizona. And the questions that the jury is asking are doozies.
How far away from you was Travis when the gun went off? Not when he lunged, but when the gun went off.
The lunging and the gun going off was sort of contemporaneous. I don't remember how close they were, or if they happened exactly at the same moment, or one right after the other. It all happened very fast, and it all seemed to happen all at once. And I would say, as far as distance, maybe as far as Mr. Babick is, but I couldn't say for sure, for absolute certainty.
You know, it's always dangerous to try to read the tea leaves, look into the crystal ball, and figure out where a jury is going based on the jury questions. But all of us trial lawyers still try. It seems to me that from the jury questions, such as, why didn't you call 911? Please go through Travis's killing again, step by step.
It started where Travis was in the shower. I was right outside the shower a few feet. I was taking photos of him, facing him in the shower. Back and forth we would check the photos. Some got deleted because they didn't turn out great, or he was making a wrong expression or something. And then others we kept. And so I would do this and do that, and then we crouched and did the same thing. We tried a few different positions. And then at one point we were deleting, and I went to move again and shift and face him, and the camera, it slipped. It was kind of like, the best I could describe it, like when you go to catch a football but it bounces and you kind of fumble it a little, because it didn't slip and just drop. It slipped, and I tried to catch it, and it kind of bounced a little and then fell on the ground and bounced and rolled onto the tile. It fell first on the mat, then it rolled right onto the tile. The mat isn't very big, it's just kind of right outside the shower, and then the tile is right outside.
Just questions that were so pointed. Why would you continue to sleep with a man who's a pedophile? Why didn't you mention any of this in your diary?
You mentioned that one of the reasons you chose not to write negative things in your journal was because you were concerned that Travis would read it. Is that correct?
That's correct. After October, I didn't write anything else negative. He found it. This would be late October, early November, and said that's not in line with the secret being the law of attraction, and maybe tear it out. So at that point, I was into the law of attraction. I agreed with him. I figured he's right, and honestly, I felt really bad because that's the first time he'd ever heard me say something, write something negative about him. I'd never said negative things toward him or about him. I always edified him positively behind his back, and I felt like, kind of like I'd been caught saying something very bad about him, so I didn't do that anymore.
Why is it such a big deal now that you had anal sex with Travis Alexander when you did that with your previous boyfriend too?
Why did you feel so uncomfortable about anal sex with Travis when you had previously tried it?
In my previous relationships, it was only something we tried one time, maybe two times, and those were long-term relationships. The reason that was not a regular part of the bedroom curriculum was because it was uncomfortable. And with Travis, that was his preference, and that's one of the reasons I got the KY. It made it less uncomfortable, obviously. So that's why it became more regular in our relationship.
A lot of questions that make such perfect common sense that tell me they do not believe Jodi Arias. The jury does not believe Jodi Arias. And if they don't believe her in one thing, how can they believe her about the day of the killing?
So at that point, he got very angry, and he stepped out of the shower. He lifted me up from the crouch position with enough force that my feet came off the ground momentarily, and he body slammed me on the tile. At that point, I rolled, and I ran down the hallway. I ran into the closet. I slammed the door. I start running. If you are looking at the diagram, it would be on the left side of the seat. I began running that way with my initial intent to probably run out this door. I instead went for the gun. I grabbed the gun. Right about then, Travis was opening the door. I grabbed it. I ran out into the bathroom. He ran, I believe, straight toward the door as well. At that point, I had run out of the bathroom, and I turned, and I just wanted him to stop, so I pointed the gun at him, hoping that would just make him halt. And it didn't. Instead, he lunged at me right around the time that the gun went off. And I I didn't mean for it to go off.
After all the lies you have told, why should we believe you now?
Lying isn't typically something I just do. I'm not going to say that I've never told a lie in my life before this incident, but the lies that I've told in this case can be tied directly back to either protecting Travis's reputation or my involvement in his death in any way, because I was very ashamed of the death, and also I wanted to edify Travis in a good way. I didn't want to de-edify him or say hateful things about him, especially now that he had passed away. And I also didn't want that to be construed as motive, for example, if he was violent with me.
This week at trial, we saw the defense team desperately trying to rehabilitate Jodi Arias on redirect examination.
Why should anybody believe you now?
Like I said before, I lied a lot in the beginning, and each of those lies tied back directly to two themes. Travis and protecting his ego, his reputation, and my own partially, and two, related to any involvement in his death.
It was a surprise to many, many people that there would be no cross-exam following that, no re-cross-examination. In this jurisdiction, it is up to the judge, and the judge determined there would not be a recross. So the defense got the last word in front of the jury as far as lawyer questioning has to go. Now, many people are on the fence about whether the defense actually rehabilitated Jodi Arias on the stand.
So I understand that there will always be questions, but all I can do at this point is say what happened to the best of my recollection. And if I'm convicted, then that's because of my own bad choices.
The first thing you saw was a complete change in demeanor yet again. She had been combative, her memory was terrible on cross-examination, but upon the very commencement, the very first questions in redirect examination, Jodi Arias could suddenly remember everything crystal clear. Her demeanor was much more sedate. She was poised. She would occasionally dab at her eyes. She was the Jodi Arias we saw on original direct examination. Did it rehabilitate her? I don't think so, because basically what she did on redirect examination this week, and it took 2 full days of it, was rehash facts that are damaging to the defense.
Well, it's a good thing that nobody else reads this, because I write right now that I love Travis Victor Alexander so completely that I don't know any other way to be. I wish I did, because at times my heart is sick and saddened over all that has come to pass. I don't understand it, and at times I still have a hard time believing it. He makes me sick, and he makes me happy. He makes me sad and miserable, and he makes me feel uplifted and beautiful.
They went round and round and round like a cat chasing its tail on those gas cans. Listen, that's a bad fact for Arias.
Well, what I do recall is when I filled the gas cans, rather than have just a loose gas hose somewhere, I didn't have anywhere to put it, so I hung it up. And when I hung it up, that ends the transaction. So that's probably why, if I could have, put them back in the trunk or wherever, and then started the car, or vice versa. At one point, I didn't want to just set it on the ground, so I hung it up. I know that ended the transaction. So that's probably why there was more than one, and maybe I was topping off the gas tank for another.
Exhibit number 237.008, Walmart receipt. You see this, correct?
Yes.
This is the Walmart that you went to in Salinas and you purchased a 5-gallon gas can, right? You told us that before, right?
Yes, I did.
And you were there on June 3rd of 2008 at 3:22 in the afternoon when you made that purchase, right?
That's correct.
Would it surprise you to find that on that, and you said that you got a refund in cash, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Would it surprise you that Walmart does not have any record of any refund for a gas can on that date of June 3rd of 2008?
Considering that I returned it, that would surprise me.
Pardon?
Considering that I returned it, that would surprise me.
It would surprise you,
Yes.
because you claim you returned it on that day, right?
Yes, I did, and I received cash for it.
Pardon?
And I received cash
And you
back
received
for it.
cash, okay.
Who in their right mind packs 5 or 6 huge gas cans filled with gas for a long trip by car? Nobody. She obviously did that. So there would be no record at any gas station by credit card or debit card or video surveillance of her stopping for gas. It's very clear. Or worse, burning a body or burning evidence. Why did they bring it up again on redirect? That was a bad idea. But they went back and forth. Did she have 2 cans or 3 cans? 3 cans or 4 cans? Who cares? You say tomato, I say tomato. It's still a bad fact. That was a bad move.
Would you consider the event when Travis choked you a stressful event?
Certainly, yes.
After you snatched the gun off the shelf, did you do anything to the gun?
I don't know. Probably not. I just grabbed it and pointed it, is what I remember. Never fired a gun, but I was relatively familiar with them. The lunging and the gun going off was sort of contemporaneous. All happened very fast, and it all seemed to happen all at once.
You are stating you believe you stabbed Travis based on logic. How do you explain the blood on your hands?
I don't know how things ended up where they ended up. I just know that we were fighting physically.
Do you agree that you came away from the June 4 incident rather unscathed?
Yes, I would have to say that's a relatively accurate assessment.
How tall are you, Miss Arias?
I think I'm 5'5.5" or 5'6", somewhere around there.
I'm a little taller than that, so I'm going to ask Miss Wilmot to come forward.
They also brought her back down off the witness stand to stand in front of the jury. And when they did that, it only accentuated the fact that she's taller than her female defense attorney.
Jodi, if you could step down, please, in front of the jury.
Judge, for purposes of this, we need to have Miss Wilmot's height.
She was spotted by the Nancy Grace crew in the courtroom screwing down the chair herself to make her shorter than her defense lawyers.
If you could, Jodi and Miss Wilmot, could we see you, for lack of a better term, recreate the pose we see in Exhibit 452?
But yet she stood in front of the jury belying the charade that she's acting out in front of them. And they did this for something to do with the broken finger.
And do you remember the date that the photograph took place?
May 15th, 2008?
If I recall correctly, that's you and your sister Angela, right?
Yes,
That is your hand around her, right?
that's right.
You would concede that there's no visible bend in your finger, at least in terms of any injury, correct?
Correct.
She's given the finger to this jury enough. They already know sometimes it's bent and sometimes it's not. I guess sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. Bottom line, all it did for me was accentuate the fact that when she wants to bend her finger to make it look broken, she can. And when she wants to straighten it out, she can. So I don't think that helped them. Anytime, trial strategy-wise, that you bring the defendant down off the stand to stand in front of the jury, it's a bad thing. It gets them too close to the jury, it gets in their space, and it can have all sorts of repercussions that you, the trial lawyer, cannot anticipate.
Memories of slashing Mr. Alexander's throat.
No, I feel like I'm the person who deserves to sit with those memories that I don't have right now. Things just get scrambled. I didn't consider when he pushed me down twice violent. He kicked my ribs and it really hurt. Choked me until I lost consciousness. I just remember everything going black. I couldn't breathe.
Also on redirect examination, she dropped a bomb. After 15 days on the stand, in front of a jury, under oath, on the Bible, she says Travis Alexander proposed to her. What? You've been on the stand 15 days talking about nothing but your relationship with Travis Alexander? How you met, your first date, he brought you Cinnabons, your oral sex, your anal sex, your this, your that. And finally, after 15 days, you tell the jury he asked you to marry him?
But it still remains that I cannot marry him. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something is just off with that boy.
Was the subject of marriage previous to January 24th, was that something that you and Travis were discussing?
Yes, we've discussed it prior to that date.
And had he ever proposed to you?
Yeah, he did over the phone once. There were times when he said it jokingly, but that one over the phone, I believed he was serious.
You can't quite put your finger on it, but something is off with that boy. What did you mean by that?
Well, that's kind of my indirect way of referring to his issues that were, in my mind, something I couldn't look past and accept.
No. Plus, the proposal occurred over the phone. I don't buy it. Travis Alexander, when he found out that Jodi Arias loved Cinnabons, went so far as to go to the mall, buy her Cinnabons, print out the recipe to Cinnabons on pink scented paper, buy her a Cinnabons gift card, place it all on her car for when she returned from an out-of-town trip to surprise her.
And I showed up to get my car, and there was this bag on the hood that said Cinnabon, and he knew that I liked Cinnabon, and I remember calling him before I flew out. I was flying out of Salt Lake, and in the Phoenix airport there's a Cinnabon stand, and I always get one before I go on my flight, and I remember lamenting a little bit, saying Cinnabon's going to be closed when I get home because it's going to be late. And so he went out to the mall and got me Cinnabon so that I'd be able to have that when I got home. It's just little things that he did like that, thoughtful things as well. He looked up a whole recipe online for Cinnabon and printed it out on pink paper and folded it up in there and put it in there with that. And he gave me a $10 gift card for Cinnabon. So it's like, just little things like that's just one example of so many little things that he's always done for me, and not just for me, but for everyone that he knew.
That's just for a Cinnabon, for Pete's sake. What would he do for a marriage proposal? It's not about, hey, this is Travis, want to get married? No, that did not happen. Another lie. Also on redirect examination, the defense brought in the phone sex tapes again.
The way you know that it sounds like it was 12-year-old girl having her first orgasm. It's so hot.
Can you see that quote on the screen?
Yes.
Was that something that you wanted him to say or encouraged him to say?
I didn't encourage him to say it.
Is it something you wanted him to say?
I just wanted him to say what he wanted to say. I didn't get specific.
Okay. And going back to the question of fantasy or reality for him, do you know if this was fantasy or reality?
Well,
Objection, it's a yes or no question.
Sustained.
Do you know if it's fantasy or reality? Or if you don't know, you don't know.
I don't know. I think it was fantasy.
She doesn't know anything else.
Sustained.
You weren't 12 at the time of this phone call, were you?
No.
Fantasy or reality is kind of gross either way, isn't it?
Sustained.
If the jury was not already numb from all the sex talk, really graphic, XXX rated sex talk, they definitely are now. I found it very unusual that the defense was allowed to just put into evidence what Travis Alexander was saying in some of the sex texting, not what Jodi Arias was saying to lure him into it or to respond. But they did. As far as I'm concerned about them rehashing the sex text messages or the phone sex tape, it's second verse, same as the first. Been there, done that. No reason for them to do that again. I think the jury was frankly bored.
In almost every question, they are looking at her truthfulness or lack thereof. They're questioning her veracity. It's not as if they're saying, tell us more of the story. It's as if they're saying, we don't believe you, and tell us the truth.
Why did you wait for so long to tell the truth?
It took a long time for me to get to this point. I never wanted to admit to this. And I had written out all my suicide letters. I sent my note. I sent them all in an envelope to my grandmother's. Do not open until November 10th, 2008. I was hoping to be dead by then. I was like giving myself a little time to get my affairs in order. That date rolled by, and then more time rolled by, and I was still here. So with the evolution of just time and the years, a couple of years that went by, it was a gradual process, and I began to feel not right about keeping it in instead.
Would you decide to tell the truth if you never got arrested?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
You say you waited 2 years to tell the truth because you were ashamed. Does that mean you are no longer ashamed?
No, that doesn't. I'm still very deeply ashamed. It simply means that it became more difficult to deal with holding it in because, like I said, the feeling of being fraudulent was so great I couldn't hold it in any longer.
Was he chasing you after you shot him in the head?
Right after the shot occurred, we had fallen over in the bathroom, again toward the sink and garbage can area, kind of in the corner. So he didn't chase me in that moment, but that's where we struggled on the floor. And again, as soon as I broke away and he said, "Effing kill you, bitch." I don't remember a lot after that, so whether he chased me or not, I couldn't say.
This week in court, the defense tried on redirect examination to reinterpret, reinvent Jodi Arias' journal. The journal where she never mentions any physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, or pedophilia. That journal.
Why then would you not write anything about seeing Mr. Alexander masturbate to the image of a child?
The biggest reason is I couldn't imagine writing something like that. Like, you know, okay, today I walked in on Travis, pictures of kids. I couldn't write something like that in my journal because that's horrific to me. And I did have personal concern that if something like that were written in my journal, that could come back to haunt me.
They tried to take snippets from the journal and conjure up a different meaning for them so as to convince the jury that she was actually referring to physical abuse and pedophilia on Travis's part. Nowhere in the journals does she mention that, but they are trying to tell the jury that that's what she's alluding to in her journal, although she never writes it. Did it work? I don't think so.
I've been in and out of foster care for most of my life. When you move from place to place, you don't really get the same connections that your peers have. You get very insecure. You don't think that people really care about your desires and wishes.
When I became a foster parent, I realized a lot of these children decide that it's not worth wishing anymore because it isn't going to happen. People have made promises to them that they haven't kept. Do you want to take any of the babies? Sure. All right, here you go. Cute. Everything's brand new. I thought, how do we give them the feeling that people are out there that care about you, even if you've never met them? My name is Danielle Glo, and I've helped make wishes come true for thousands of foster children all over the country. Anybody, anywhere, anytime can look at hundreds of wishes from children in foster care. Working on auditioning for a play, and he needs the radio in order to practice with his audition CD. Wishes are as unique as the children who make them, and so personal. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. These small things make an enormous difference in the life of a child. It's really just a kid being a kid.
My wish was for a suit so that I could attend a family member's funeral. It meant a lot that someone took the time and they knew that that was important.
This looks awesome. When a child's wish is granted, we are reassuring them that their voices are being heard.
I love you, Evie.
That there is this big world out there that just wants to wrap their arms around them and protect them. And we need to all step up and do that.
The defense on redirect circled back to the .25 caliber murder weapon, where it came from. They made a point of talking to Arias about all the different places that she could have gotten a gun, as opposed to stealing her grandparents' .25 caliber, coincidentally the same caliber gun that killed Travis Alexander. And her response was that there were several people, and she rattled them off, from whom she could borrow a gun, which in my mind completely misses the mark. If this woman was willing to load up her trunk with gallons and gallons of gasoline and gas cans so she wouldn't leave a trail, do you really think she's going to borrow a gun from someone before she goes and kills Travis Alexander so they could be a state's witnesses? Oh, no. She's going to get a gun that cannot be traced.
If she hadn't been caught in a web of lies, would Jodi Arias ever have come clean about killing Travis Alexander? Jurors wanted to know.
Would you decide to tell the truth if you never got arrested?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Why, they asked, did it take her so long to tell the truth? It wasn't until 2 years after the killing that she claimed self-defense. First, she said she wasn't there, then changed her story to 2 masked intruders. All her lying seems to have hit a nerve with the jury.
After all the lies you have told, why should we believe you now?
Lying isn't typically something I just do, but the lies that I've told in this case can be tied directly back to either protecting Travis's reputation.
And what about Arias's experience with guns?
Never fired a gun, but I was relatively familiar with them.
And even if she wasn't sure she'd shot Alexander, as she says, why not call 911 for help in case?
When I sort of came out of the fog, I realized, oh crap, something bad had happened, and I was scared to call any authority at that point.
Right after she killed Alexander, Arias drove to Utah to visit another guy. The jury wanted to know how she could kiss another man just hours after shooting and stabbing her ex-boyfriend to death. She explained she had no choice. She had to show up to avoid suspicion. And like every other day in court, the testimony eventually turned to the couple's sex life. The jury has listened to recordings of their phone sex, read their dirty text messages, even looked at naked pictures they took the day of the killing. But they wanted to know more. If he had abused Arias in the past, as she claims, why did she go along with Alexander's sexual fantasies?
If you were scared of what Travis was capable of doing, why would you ever let him tie you up?
When that occurred, he was in a very good mood, and again, they were loose enough to wiggle out of, so I wasn't like stuck there.
And on the day she killed him?
Was Travis tied up at any point on June 4, 2008?
No.
There were also more questions about Arias's memory lapses.
You remember dropping the knife and screaming, but you don't remember taking the gun or rope with you.
It goes blank after that. I don't remember putting the gun in the car. I don't remember putting the rope in the car.
How can you say that you don't have memory issues when you can't remember how you stabbed him so many times and slashed his throat?
Well, I think that I have a good memory, and June 4th is an anomaly for me. I don't think I have memory issues that are any different from another average person.
One thing Arias may never forget are these pictures of Travis Alexander dead.
Would you agree that you came away from the June 4 incident rather unscathed, while Travis suffered a gunshot and multiple stab wounds? You only had a bump on your head, a bruise on your head, cuts or scrapes on your ankles, and a possible shoulder injury.
As far as making comparison of physical injuries, him versus mine, yes, I would have to say that's a relatively accurate assessment.
Randy Kay, CNN, Phoenix, Arizona.
During these altercations, why didn't you just scream in hopes that someone would hear you and help you?
I did scream. I wasn't thinking of somebody helping me. For example, I screamed when he threw me on the floor and started kicking me. I was unable to scream when he had his hands around my windpipes.
Jodi Arias' demeanor has changed upon the commencement of jury questioning. She is much more animated, and what that means to body language experts is that she is searching for an answer when she is gesticulating wildly, or she is looking from left to right. When there are long pauses, like I just did, when you're formulating your next thought instead of telling a flowing story, that means that she is constructing answers. She's not just telling the truth. That's what it means to a body language expert. I don't know what it's going to mean, if anything, to this jury, but her demeanor has definitely changed upon the commencement of jury questioning.
And I'm sure I was screaming on June 4th.
Up to this point in the trial, there is not a shred of evidence, of believable, credible evidence, that Jodi Arias acted in self-defense. We have yet to hear from the defense battered women experts, battered women syndrome experts. They may make a dent for the defense, but it's my belief that at this juncture, the jurors have already made up their minds. I don't know if they all agree with each other, but I think they've made up their minds by now. We've still got a few more witnesses left for the defense, and then probably a rebuttal case by the state. And I say probably because once the defense puts up experts to a theory such as battered women syndrome defense, then the state will respond with their own experts. Usually it's tit for tat. If the defense puts up two, the state will put up two. That's what I'm thinking will happen.
During your testimony about the abuse by Travis, you have made several comments like, "As I understand it now," or "I've come to realize when discussing events that you may not have classified as abuse then, but see it as such now. Have you utilized professional help?"
I have not had access to professional help. No, I haven't utilized that.
I'm absolutely looking forward to next week because I think there may be more jury questions than we know of right now. And also because I'm waiting for the icing on the cake cooked up by the defense. And that is the experts that they believe are going to tie the defense case together with a big, beautiful bow for them to then present to the jury. I don't know if that's going to work out exactly the way they planned.